So, we've all seen the ads everywhere. Prevagen, the miraculous miracle drug to treat age-related memory loss. It miraculously improves cognition, increases memory, and helps you with being able to restore your memory to a state that maybe it once was in when you were younger. But are the claims by Prevagen actually legitimate? Well, let's talk about the science behind that.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Sponsored by Denver Family Lawyers, advocates in advocacy since 1997.
Hello, you scientists, and welcome on back to The Science Behind That podcast. I am your host, Atticus Hamilton, and I hope you guys are doing good. As you heard from the intro, today we are going to be talking about Prevagen. And Prevagen, is, before we get too deep into it, it is a dietary supplement that is marketed as being like some sort of miracle memory drug, I guess. And today we're going to actually take a look on if any of what is claimed about Prevagen is actually legitimate. And before we do that, I also like to say I'd like to invite all of you to go grab yourselves a nice steaming hot cup of coffee, add a little bit of maple syrup to it, and we'll jump right in. And I'm sorry if my voice sounds weird. I went to a rock concert last week, and yeah, my voice still has not recovered from that. So anyway, let's jump right in. So what is Prevagen? Because I'm sure we've all seen the commercials for it, and they say, Prevagen is a protein found in jellyfish that's been proven to help with brain function. But what exactly is Prevagen? Well, let's talk about that. So, Prevagen is a compound, or the active ingredient in Prevagen is a compound called apoaquorin, Apoaequuorin, and it was originally found, this is true, in a species of jellyfish called Aquaria victoria, which is, I know it rhymes, right? But it's a very small species of jellyfish found in like the Indo-Pacific region. And the version of apoaquorin that you see in Prevagen is laboratory made. Obviously, right? Because it would be totally unsustainable to source it all the time from a jellyfish. And so what are the claims about it? Well, the claims about Prevagen are that, it improves memory loss associated with aging and increases healthy brain function. And they also say that it supports brain health, whatever that means. Enhances mental clarity and focus, supports a sharper mind and clearer thinking, right? So, again, I think most of us, at least here in America, have seen these advertisements for it. And so those are the claims from the manufacturer. And so, again, it is marketed as a dietary supplement, not as a drug. And why is that the case? The reason that's the case is because by marketing it as a dietary supplement, there is no requirement for regulation or oversight from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Now, I don't know what those laws look like in other countries. I just know in the United States, generally speaking, if a substance is marketed as a dietary supplement, it does not have to go through the regulation process and the animal testing and the human testing that drugs do. And again, there are certain exceptions, right? We've seen before in the past with like nicotinamide mononucleotide, which originally was marketed as a dietary supplement, but became listed as a drug by the FDA because a pharmaceutical company realized it actually had therapeutic purposes. And so because the FDA in a lot of situations is, for lack of a better phrase, in bed with the pharmaceutical company, NMN was delisted as a dietary supplement and cannot be sold as that anymore in the U.S. But that's a totally different story. I did do a whole episode on nicotinamide mononucleotides, so if you guys are interested, I definitely encourage you and invite you to go take a listen, check out that episode. It was a lot of fun to do. So diving back into this. So what is Prevagen for? And we talked about that, but does it actually do the things that they claim it does? And the long story short is that we don't really know because there's not a lot of literature out there. So if we take a look at the current advertising for this dietary supplement, it says it's designated as the #1 pharmacist recommended brand. But what does that actually mean? Well, the American Society of Pharmacy published basically a literature review investigating this claim. And what they found is that Prevagen is marketed as, quote, a #1 pharmacist recommended brand simply because the company that produces Prevagen did a survey facilitated by Pharmacy Times, which is like a magazine subscription, to ask those who have the subscription, what substance for improving brain health would you prefer over generic brands? So is it truly the #1 pharmacist recommended brand? Well, no. But is it the #1 recommended brand amongst the people that read Pharmacy Times? Yes, I guess. And the study also found out that there's very little evidence to suggest that the substance does anything or any of the things that the company says it does. And, the Harvard Medical School Health Publishing, they published an article here talking about how the FDA, I know we're talking about the FDA now, but how the FDA came out to dispute some of the claims by the manufacturers of Prevagen, and they were saying that there's not enough literature to support the claims that are made about it. And again, I know that the FDA is a little biased when it comes to things like that, but in this situation, there really aren't that many studies about Prevagen, and the few that are there, or that are out there, have either yielded mixed results. B, have a sample size of like 20 people, which is too small, or C, are very small studies of like 5-10 people that are sponsored by the company that makes Prevagen, which therefore produces I guess, almost a shadow or a cloud of doubt around the overall credibility of Prevagen itself. And, when we look further into apoaquarin, there are very few high-quality studies that demonstrate its effectiveness. There was a study called the Madison Memory Study, and that was 218 adults aged 40 to 91 with self-reported memory concerns that were given apoaquarin or a placebo for 90 days. And these subjects participated in various cognitive tasks designed to evaluate memory and learning. And overall, initial and post-study analyses failed to show any significant difference in the groups, or between the test group and the placebo group. And so, again, that was a study with 218 adults. aged 40 to 91. So again, on the older side of the bell curve. And this, in my mind, definitely shows that, we can't necessarily say that Prevagen doesn't work, but we shouldn't go into this thinking that it will work, because this study here, as with many others, have shown either mixed results or, in this case, no beneficial results or no beneficial effects of taking apoaquarin. That being said, it does produce some side effects. The side effects of consumption may include headache, dizziness, nausea, memory problems, ironically, difficulty sleeping, and anxiety. And the safety overall of the substance is not known. However, there was a study that was recently conducted to investigate potential liver toxicity of apoaquarin, and they did not find any significant results. So at the very least, there is no liver toxicity with it, but it may cause memory problems, which in my mind is hilarious for a supposed nootropic substance. And so what does this mean then going down the line? And in previous episodes, I've talked about nootropics, and for those of you who don't know or haven't heard those episodes, nootropics are just substances or drugs that increase mental capability. It could be memory, problem solving, critical thinking, things like that. It increases cognitive ability. And there are actual nootropic substances out there. Nicotinamide mononucleotide has shown promising evidence in nootropic activity. And then the drug modafinil, which used to be used to treat narcolepsy, is now being discovered that it actually is a pretty strong nootropic drug. But what I'd like to talk about here at the end of our episode for today is, how does a nootropic work? Or theoretically speaking, how could a nootropic work? Well, a nootropic could work in a couple of ways. The first is that a nootropic drug could increase cognitive ability by decreasing the refractory period between neuronal firing. And now, what is a refractory period? Essentially, what a refractory period is it's a rest time between when a neuron fires once and when it fires again. There's a rest time there that it has to rebuild up that action potential before it can fire. And that can contribute to memory capability, right? Because the faster and quicker your neurons are able to fire in the early stage of memory encoding, the more likely you are to put that thing you're trying to learn from short-term memory into long-term memory or long-term potentiation. And so that's one way to do it, is a drug could theoretically either decrease the refractory period or assist in neurotransmitter production or conduction across the synaptic cleft. And so what that means is that it would basically just help the neurotransmitters travel from one neuron to the receptor on another neuron, which would help with conveying that memory, with converting that memory from short-term into long-term memory, right? So those are two ways, I guess, decreasing the refractory period and then increasing the efficiency of neurotransmitter action. Another way is by increasing blood flow to the brain. And this is the most common method of action that you see with a lot of the dietary supplements out there, is that the substances reportedly increase blood flow to the brain. Now, what does that mean? And why does that matter, right? Well, neurons are very, very hungry, and the brain consumes about 20% of all of the ATP produced in the entire human body, right? So that is a lot of energy, and the brain needs a lot of energy, which is why, if you're starving, you don't really make good decisions, right? Because your brain needs energy, and so the hungrier you are, the larger negative effect you see in your cognitive problem-solving capability. But anyway, so a substance could increase blood flow to the brain. And we see certain preliminary studies in various dietary supplements out there like Alpha Brain. Now, I'm not sponsored by Alpha Brain, but there are certain extracts and stuff in Alpha Brain that may potentially increase blood flow to the brain and aid in memory and learning. And why would increasing blood flow to the brain aid in memory and learning? Because the more nutrients, i.e. the more ATP the neurons have, the better they can fire, the quicker they can respond to stimuli, and the quicker they can convert your short-term memory from short-term memory into long-term memory. And then, of course, the fourth way, so we've discussed 3 so far, right? The fourth and final way, really, that substance could increase memory would be by basically inducing the proliferation of neural glial cells. Now, what are neural glial cells? Neural glial cells are essentially the garbage men in the brain. What they do is they go around the brain and they basically eat up all of the debris and the nasty junk in the brain, the byproducts of synaptic action, right? The byproducts of your neurons functioning. It produces waste products, and neural glial cells, they metabolize those waste products. And so one way of increasing memory and cognition would be to induce further proliferation of neural glial cells. And then finally, in certain situations, there are certain drugs that could help in inducing the remyelination of neurons, right? Because neurons are covered by, or their axons are covered by myelin sheaths, which basically they insulate the action potential of the neuron, allowing it to fire more efficiently. And we know that when myelin is damaged and those myelin sheaths are damaged, it's kind of like an electrical wire where, you know, if you remove the insulation, electricity doesn't travel very well. Same thing with neurons. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have for you today. I hope that this episode has taught you something about Prevagen, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I will see you all on Friday. Have a fantastic Monday, and remember, as always, ladies and gentlemen, stand up and question everything.